Welcome to the After Show, where we explore the message behind the message. I'm Michael, I'm your host today, and I'm so excited that you're joining us. If you have not done this yet, be sure to subscribe wherever you're seeing this so that you can get all the latest episodes and all of the updates. Now, we are in a new series, it's actually been going a couple weeks, called Hope for the Home. And so we're doing things a little bit differently right now. In fact, today I get the awesome privilege of interviewing the Burdens. This is Agnieszka and Andrew Burden. So excited you guys are joining us today. Thank you for doing this.
Happy to be here.
They've been part of Calvary for a while. They have some amazing kids, and we're just going to explore this conversation about what it looks like to parents and to help have hope for our kids right now. Now, I don't know about you guys, but this has been a crazy season. How has COVID been for you guys when it comes to raising kids, doing school, working? What does that look like? Has that been crazy?
It's been a challenge. And a challenge is an understatement. So yes, we're a family of 6, and we've all been at home together. So it's different. You know, our youngest child is in school part-time, but our older 3 are at home, and you know, it's a different lifestyle. Zoom conversations with work, and you know, helping them check on their Zooms on screen at home. So it's been different. It's been a challenge.
What's been the hardest part about that?
The school. It was funny because at first when they started remote, it all started good. I had a nice setup. I was like proud. I'm like, I could do this. Here's gonna be like, individual stations. My 6-year-old's gonna be over here, and everybody we went shopping. We got all school supplies. I'm like, this is gonna be great. It lasted like 2 days, and then after that, I was telling him like, I can't. I don't know what I'm doing. They all need individual attention, and we figure it out. And what else can you do?
Yeah.
We learned teachers need $1 million a year.
Yeah.
That's for sure. Because now you're all like homeschool parents, which
Yes.
has been interesting, but you're also like trying to do things with the school, which is actually an extra layer. So a lot of people say it's kind of like being homeschool parents right now. No, it's not. It's like being homeschool parents inside of a school.
That's right.
At home still. And so, man, hats off to you guys. I know you're working hard. And Andrew, you're working from home at the same time?
I am.
So you got that extra layer of you're trying to talk to people and be on calls yourself.
Yes. Meanwhile, Layla's running in the middle of a Zoom and disrupting whatever's going on. People have been gracious. Thank God. They've understood that families are at home together. But yeah, it's been challenging.
That's amazing. And Agnieszka, you're able to dedicate time. Are you working also?
I'm working as well.
Okay, so you're doing something also.
Yeah, so I'm working here and working with my 6-year-old or 10-year-old over here, and yeah.
Who's it been the hardest on so far in terms of your kids? Do you think it's harder for the older kids now having this weird season of not being with peers? Is it harder for the younger kids as they're trying to figure this out?
I think it's a challenge for all, but I'd say that our youngest is taking it the hardest. I think that the personal time with the instructor is critical at this age. She's 7, and it's challenging. We do as best as we can with what we can, helping educate, but they need that structure, and the screen time is it's too much.
Yeah.
It's completely too much. And we feel for our 15-year-old too. I mean, it's a struggle not to connect with friends, and she's fabulous. She's done a great job with what she's been dealt this year. So kudos to the teenagers, but our younger ones are taking it a little bit harder.
They've all had like a stage from the beginning. It was just like at one point it was one that was even at the midst of depression, because it's like, I miss my friends, I need church. You just pull them out of their routine, and they're not understanding like, when is all this going to end? And then as it progresses and as we become closer as a family, and we have to be more creative, and like, how do we pull them from those things? How do we keep them and make them feel comfortable where we are now? Then they went like, okay, this is not so bad. This is not so bad. But they've all had a stage within these past year.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
So we are in this series, Hope for Your Family. This past weekend, we had the opportunity to talk about what it looks like to get back to the scriptures and to really help this next generation get it differently. I do believe with all of my heart, when COVID hit, God put this ginormous reset button right in the middle of everything that was happening. We have the chance to now do things completely differently. You're doing work different. Both of you are doing work differently than probably it was before. We're doing schooling differently. I just really believe this is a chance for the church to rise up and say, we're going to raise this next generation differently also. So let me ask you this. In the middle of the dynamics of school, work at home, all of that, how are you finding it is? Is it easy or is it hard to keep also this focus of growing faith together in exploring the Bible and understanding that as a family? Has that been a difficult challenge?
I think it's definitely a challenge. It's not easy. I think that prior to COVID, it was a challenge for a lot of families in just the busyness.
Yeah.
I think that with this whole pandemic, like you said, it's given a reset button to really reevaluate priorities, and having biblical teaching in the home is extremely important, and I don't think it's ever been as important as it is today. And so it is a struggle, but we just have to make time to find it and figure it out, because our kids need it. Like Nancy said, there's depression, there's so many things that are going on in their heads that we're not, we might overlook if we're not having that time with them and really understanding and providing them the guidance, the biblical guidance that we have at our fingertips.
Yeah. I don't know what that time looks like in your home. I remember growing up when my parents would say, hey, we're going to read the Bible together, we're going to study. It was, oh my word, it was like everybody was running different directions trying to hide. I remember one time hiding underneath the piano bench, like, I hope they don't find me, right in our living room. And because there was just like this weird feeling around, we're going to read the Bible now. It was so heavy and so like not fun as kids. What do you guys do right now to kind of bring that to life for your kids? Are the things that you've implemented as a family to say, here's how we make this an enjoyable time together? And can we be real and say that maybe it's not always that easy? I mean, you got kids of all ages as well. Yeah. I'm sure there's times where you have more real conversations with Shawnalay, and then Drew is not going to be inside that same type of conversation because he's just not going to get it yet. How do you balance that? What do you do as a family?
It's important. I mean, there's a couple things to that. There's, I think each child is at a different pace and at a different stage. And so to make it relatable for all, it really has to be a conversation that's broad enough for understanding for Drew, but tailored enough for your older, like our Shawnalay, to keep focus, right? And so sometimes it's separate conversations. Mm-hmm. It's me and Shawnalay while we're practicing driving, having our conversation, or it's me and Drew playing superheroes, and this is Moses, this is and just really putting those principles together in a way that they understand. But most importantly, that it's engaging, keeping them engaged and really making that message understandable and relatable. And kudos to Calvary and the youth ministry and the kids ministry, because you guys do a great job. They really love the Sunday service, after service, watching the kids, and you get goofy and you just do those things, and they relate to that. They eat that up because it's given to them at their level or at their stage, and we play off of that. We leverage those tools, and we're thankful that those are there, because we'd probably be the same thing, trying to read the Bible to 4 kids that are trying to run away. So
that's funny.
I will say one thing where, we'll put her out there, but one thing where Natasha is at, she's our 10-year-old, and she is really looking for, she's like, Mom, I want a deeper connection. She's like, and I feel like I'm not getting it, I try to explain to her a lot that a lot of times as, even as Christians, or sometimes we feel like the more we seek God, it's like we're never close enough, it's like, oh, like we want to be so close, I'm like, that is something that I don't know if we'll ever accomplish, to get that feeling that we're seeking, but I'm like, but there are ways. So she's like, I feel guilty because I don't read my Bible enough. I'm like, well, that's where I go tell her, I'm like, do you do your homework every day? And she's like, yeah. She's like, that's a priority. Do you know you have to sign in at school every day at 8 o'clock? She's like, yeah, that's my job. It's my priority. I'm like, so you got to make God your priority. So before you sign into school, it starts at 8 o'clock. Now you start at 7:30 because 7:30 is the time you start your day with the Lord, and that's the time you start. You pull out your Bible, your devotional. I'm like, could be 15 minutes, 10 minutes, And I give her a little devotional just to get her started, and like not a whole Bible, like where do I start? Yeah. And she's been doing that. And she's like, okay, for the next 30 minutes before 8 o'clock hits, she's in her devotional or she's in her Bible. I'm like, and that's your priority. That's your commitment. The same way we commit and we have an appointment to be somewhere, like you have to make that priority and commitment to be with God.
That's so good. And what you're seeing, and that's amazing to hear at 10 years old, she's asking those questions and feeling that weight. When did you, for yourselves, see the faith become your own faith versus your parents' faith? Which I guess I should start by saying, did you guys grow up in church? Did you have that type of influence in your life? And then when did that shift become, well, this is my faith, this is what I believe now?
I think we grew up very differently. So where he grew up in church, I didn't. And we'll share, but so like my faith started at 9 years old, which is where Natasha is at now. And I did not grow up in a Christian household. My parents did not go to church. But it's funny because it was something that was in me that I felt something was calling me. And at that time, I did not know what this voice was or what it's kind of like in a surreal situation. But I used to just pray in my room, and my mom would come in and like, who are you talking to? I'm like, I'm talking to God. And she's like, all right, and she'd leave me alone, but it was not a Christian household. Then I think by 10 or 11, I remember I used to drive by this church, and it was a Catholic church. And I was like, I want to go in there. My mom's like, you want to go to church? I'm like, yeah. And she's like, well, I'm not stepping foot in there. And I was like, okay. She's like, I'll drop you off. And I was like 10, 11-year-old girl, and my mom would drop me off at the steps of this Catholic church. And she's like, what time will service be over? And I'm like, I think it ends at this time. She's like, I'll be here. So grateful that she was able to at least let me go and not be like, you're not participating in that. And that's just kind of how I just started developing my own faith and myself, just kind of seeking him. And it's just a craziest story, but it's just like now throughout the years, like I see that how God has been holding on to me. And even there was a point when we met at 16, 17, where I started losing track of that, a lot of things happening. And I'm just like, I don't know if this God is real. I don't, started doubting that, or being rebellious, I guess. I always knew he was real. I was just starting rebelling, like, I don't want to believe in that, And that's when I met him, and he was pretty much like, well, I go to church, so.
Good reason for you to keep going to church, right?
Exactly, yeah, and that's pretty much, he's like, well, I go to church. He started taking me to church. His godfather is actually one of the pastors of his church, and he's like, well, what is it? I'm going to take you in here, but you got to go in with an open mind, and we'll discuss it ever. So at 17, we were sitting in his car outside the church, and he's like, well, what do you think of service? And I was always like, I had my list of things, especially when it came to women, I had my list of things. And he's like, well, what if you saw it in this light? Or what if, always just kind of pushing me to see the best of it. And,
I think I think our faith grew more as a couple than in our adolescence. I was raised in church. My mother found Christ when I was 7 years old. Grew up in a single-parent household for majority of it, and my mom was my backbone and strength and everything. And she made sure that we got up and went to church every week. I feel like we were there every day, but we had the Tuesday night Bible study, we had the Wednesday night youth group, and those things mattered so much to me because they really gave me foundation. More than anything, it gave me guiding principles for how to live. And, I remember to this day sermons that made me make decisions that were so critical to my success as a youth. just staying out of trouble. I grew up in a neighborhood where it was rough and it was not easy. And you know, you're at that end of the road and you can go this way and down a terrible path, or, you know, go the way of your youth leaders and your church, and you know, what they were preaching mattered so much. So I would say, you know, 12, 13 years old was when I really, you know, it wasn't about my mom anymore. It was about me and my connection with God, and what I was being taught and being instilled really began to resonate. And I took that through my high school years.
Wow. So the church played a pretty vital role for you, especially.
Absolutely.
But even it drew you in. And so then I love the dynamic of this. So church was a vital part, and then the two of you together figured out faith as you grew together. And it works great in a couple scenario, but also just having other believers that are on this journey together. Wouldn't you say that's a huge part of our growth and our becoming who God wants us to be and understanding Him? Isn't that a huge part of who we are?
Absolutely. I think that, I tell you, some of my best conversations I found were in our small groups years back, and it's so interesting because you talk to these people today, and folks don't realize the impact that they make in the words that we say, and we, you know, just these conversations, you know. And it wasn't even the tape that we were watching or the video that we were watching in small group. It was just the conversation around parenting from people. They were just talking about their experiences. I remember, man, it's been 10 years, but I was in a small group with our friends, the Chatfields, and I just remember Mark saying something about how he was raising his son. It just made me say, gosh, when I have a son, I want to be like that. Wow. And those things are so important. Our community is so important.
Yeah, wow.
Because those are the things that really, really nurture and guide young Christian families into the kingdom and help bring those generations. Like Nieska said, it wasn't a Christian home in her family. My family prior to my mom wasn't a Christian home. We're still praying for a lot of our family, but my children will know God. Their children will know God because of these relationships we built and because of the connection we've made to God through our connections here.
That's so good. Hey, you're both involved in our student ministries here. First, let me just say thank you so much. You know, we do believe there's a generation that God wants to grow and do something differently. When we talked about Josiah this weekend, just that whole thought that he had the people around him who'd help him make right decisions. In fact, before we even get into his story, we see that he's 8 years old when he becomes the king. But by 18 years into it, so he's 26 at this point, he's already made decisions to rebuild the temple and try to figure some things out differently than those that went before him, which those that went before him are his parents, his grandparents, you know, so it's not like it's just, oh, the people that came around before. No, we're talking his family. He chose to step out of that cycle and say, I want this differently. So he had the people around him right from the get-go that invested in him. And so when they find the book of the law, he's able to turn to them and say, go inquire for me of the Lord. You know, go talk to Huldah the prophetess and find out what this all means. And so we see this importance of having biblical relationships, leaders that will help invest and help make wise decisions. Why do you guys, because you're so busy, you've got kids, you've got work, there's so many things going on in life right now, yet you're still involved with our students. Why do you do that? What makes you say, I want to be part of Calvary Church's youth ministries?
I'll say for me, youth are everything. Youth are our future. And if we don't love on them and surround them with people who care about them, we won't have a future. We won't have a Calvary Church in 30 years, right? I think that it's vital to the success of moving God's kingdom to care and instill. While we love our children at home, there's so many that don't have two parents at home. There's so many that don't have Christian parents at home that come to church, just like Nieska. They come here every day but don't get the love that they need at home. And when they have an opportunity to see an adult who not only cares and loves for their children, because my kids are always running around because we serve together, you know? When they see that, they get a different feeling. And when you can give them that different feeling, they can broadcast that. They can project that onto their friends, onto their relationships, onto their parents, right? We've seen so many families come to Calvary through the kids. We were part of that. Like the kids ministry is what kept us here at Calvary.
So many Wednesday nights we're like, we're not going. And Shanley's like, I'm going to church. I'm like, well, she can't go by herself, so we got to go.
We all got to go. Let's load it up.
So.
That's why we love youth, and it's important, and everyone should, even if you don't have children. Like, I mean, they're so important to us. They're so creative, and the joy that they bring when they ask questions that are so off the wall, you know, it just really makes you think, like, wow, you know, your thinking is light years ahead of this old guy, you know?
Wow.
And you know, we need to love that, nurture that, and build that up, because there's talent here within that ministry, for sure.
But if you do have kids, it's a way to stay relevant. I mean, for us, it's like we're always on top of our children. Like, you know, I don't know all the slang, but we need to be relevant. We need to be, what is it that they're into now? And what better way to do that than to be involved in their circle, you know? So it's like, I'm a high school leader, and it's like, why? Like, because I have a high schooler. I need to know how her brain works. I need to know who her friends are, you know, and if they're thinking wrong, then who's going to impact them? I'm like, well, if you're going to hang around with my child, let me be me, the one who's going to, you know, try to at least coach you or be that impact, you know.
Good, yeah.
So whichever way you say, if you don't have children, you can make an impact, and if you do, then stay relevant and stay with your child, you know, grow together, and it keeps you young.
Yeah.
Yes, that's true.
So.
And as parents, it feels good to have other people in your corner, right?
Absolutely.
Like, even I'll tell you, as a pastor, when my kids come to this church, you know, to know, I got 2 girls that are both teenagers right now. If they had a leader like you, Nashka, that is investing in them, it makes my life so much easier, because I don't have to be the only voice. They stopped listening to me a long time ago, right? You can say something to them that I've said 1,000,000 times. Now you said it, and like, yeah, we're going to do that. And I'm like, I've been saying that. Yes. And when Gavin gets a little bit older and he has a junior high leader that's someone like Andrew, and you say something that just impacts his life, now me as a parent is able to sit back and just be grateful for the work God is doing, and to have that support and that encouragement. So it's so huge, isn't it?
It is. It's really huge.
So let me ask you this. What's some qualities you see in your kids right now that you just absolutely love, that you're just like, man, I am so proud of them? And you know, here's one thing I always encourage parents: don't ever talk about your kids by name. Just bring up some, like, hey, some qualities that you love that you can just generally say right now.
There's so many. We're so proud of our kids. Like, I'm so grateful, and it's not us. It's a community that's really raised these kids, and I mean, our oldest is told us she's going to med school.
Wow.
I'm super pumped. Like, you know, it's just amazing. Their thoughtfulness, their heart. Like, all 3 of them. All my girls have the biggest heart in the world, and they'll do anything. They'll give the shirt off their back to help someone, and I appreciate and admire their thought process at such a young age.
And I do, and it amazes me, and I always go to him crying. I'm like, you know, they're so beautiful. And I give credit to God, because when I see myself as a parent, I see myself with so much flaws and so much, like, this is definitely not me. You know, this is not us, you know. So I give it to, you know, trying our best and raising them, you know, in a Christian home, and trying to, you know, instill in them, the best we can. And I just give it to God. But they're all wonderful.
You guys have some amazing kids. I mean, they're beautiful, wonderful. Your oldest leading worship, oh my word. That's got to be so fulfilling as a parent, to see her leading in front of her peers and not worrying about anything else other than worshiping the Lord. What does that do to you guys when you see that happen?
I told myself I gotta stop coming when she's singing, because I'm just gonna put it out there. I'm like, but yes, I'm like, I'm worshiping and at the same time, and I'm crying. One of the moments the songs that she sings is that, God, You're So Good. And when she sings it and I'm just like looking at her, I'm like, Lord, I'm like, yes, you are. Yes, you are. Because to me, it's like, that's every parent's dream. It's like at least mine, I can say that. But having your child at the age that she is 15 and she's on stage and she's worshiping God and, she's given her life to God, and it's just like, I can breathe. I feel like a sense of like, oh, at least she's built. I don't know what's going to happen, from here to college or whatever, but I know that she's always going to come back, and for that, it's just like, I can breathe because I know God's taken her. So, yes.
Amen. Well, almost out of time here. Let me just ask you a couple more quick things. What's something you see in your kids that you just go crazy about? You're like, what are you doing? Maybe and this is how it is for us parents, right? It's the thing we dislike about ourselves the most, or we knew we did growing up that we see in them now. They're like, oh, is there anything like that you guys would say, oh, that drives me crazy? What's that?
Clumsiness.
Really?
And it's not their fault. But yes, my goodness, they are clumsy, and their attention spans sometimes are just this small.
Yes.
But they're
Bring it in.
fantastic. You have to wheel them, we have to wheel them in often, especially the younger ones and the boy. Oh my gosh,
He's a boy, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's very different. It's very different, but it's very fun.
That's so good.
Yeah.
So even inside of, and there's some more serious things that sometimes we see, like I see some things, I've always struggled maybe with a little confidence. I've struggled with my emotions, how to relay those. And I see that come out in my kids a lot. And even inside of those types of things, I still have hope for them. I have hope for what their future looks like because I know God is a good God. What would you say to a parent right now, as we finish this up here, that might be struggling with, man, my kids just aren't in the same spot. They're never going to be up there on stage worshiping, and I've been praying for them, and I've been longing for them to know God as their own faith, but they're not there yet. What would you say to, as parents and as leaders in our youth ministry, what would you say to encourage those parents right now?
The first thing I would say is to get engaged. There's no better place to be to help your child navigate through this process than in the house of God. I think that, and I have a partial bias to serving in the youth ministry, but I think it's a great program that we have here. The resources, the leadership that we have here, we can really have in-depth conversations with not only the youth but the parents, right? Some of our better conversations have been with former youth leaders. How did you navigate this process? And let's talk about it. Continue to pray and to continue to seek God together, with your child. Sunday, it was one of those things that was like, you hear kids do what they see, not always what they hear, right? And if your walk is with God, their walk can be with God. Yes. And if you demonstrate that, they emulate that, right? Yes. And so it's important for not only as adults to walk it, but to talk it, mm-hmm. and do those things that are necessary, like being in the house and engaging your youth.
Yeah.
That's good.
I think being upfront with your kids, have those conversations. A lot of times, one thing that I've learned is you don't minimize your children. The same way, give them respect. They're a lot smarter than what we give them credit for.
Yeah.
And they do have struggles. They do have peer pressure. They are battling a lot of things. I grew up in a household where it was just like, you have no problems, just because I wasn't, you don't pay bills and you don't go to work, right? You're not an adult. You don't have problems, but kids do. They have a lot of things going on. So talk to them and be upfront. One thing I don't do is like, we don't sugarcoat stuff with our kids. This is real life. This is the way you're going to hear it. This is the way it's going to be. And they'll talk real back to you. So once you get real conversations, and real feedback, then you'll be able to be like, okay, where do we start?
Yeah.
And be able to guide them where they need to go.
That's so great. Hey, you guys are phenomenal parents and leaders. Can't thank you enough for being here today, for being part of our ministries to our students. You do a great job, and we're so appreciative of you. That's all the time we have today, though, here at the After Show. Just want to remind you that we believe and hope for the next generation, and we know God is going to do something amazing in them. In fact, we are starting something called Open Bible Conversations that starts next Sunday night, the 28th. And we're so excited to just be able to go back to what the scriptures say and help our students get biblical understanding of who God is and his plan for their life. Hey, be sure, once again, subscribe to these so that you can get them all back. But we will see you again soon on the After Show. Thanks for being part of it. We love you, and we'll talk to you again soon.